told my husband I wanted to sleep with 2 other men at once, but not him. I didn't think he'd get angry. I know it's probably not a good idea to put all my business out there like this and reveal such sensitive stuff to strangers, but I'm just not sure what else to do. I honestly didn't intend for things to get to this point. I should have put an end to it before it even began. I knew that it wasn't going to end anywhere good and that he was probably already in over his head, but I didn't stop. I let it play out because I was selfish. I met my husband Sean a few years back, about 6 now, and things between us moved quickly once we crossed paths. We started talking casually at first, and then dating not long after. It was clear, almost from the beginning, that there was something there. We had an amazing connection, and being with him felt effortless in a way that was new for me. There weren't any games or second-guessing, and I didn't feel like I had to perform to keep his attention. It was steady and simple in the best way. We've been married for 3 years now, and for most of that time, I've thought of him as the one person who made me settle into a life I never thought I would have. But in order for this post to make any sense, I need to explain where I came from before him. Before Sean, I lived differently. I was different. I got into the club and partying scene pretty young, younger than I probably should have, and it shaped a lot of who I was for years. It was through that scene that I discovered that I was polyamorous, or at the very least not strictly monogamous. Back then, the circles I ran with were full of people who didn't really believe in the traditional rules of relationships. Everyone was freely affectionate with each other. It was fluid, and it was open. At first, I was just following along, going with the flow because I didn't want to be the odd one out. But after a while, I realized that it didn't feel wrong to me. I actually liked it. It was freeing and exciting to not be tied down, to not feel the weight of having to be everything for one person. I had always felt like I had too much love to give, that I cared too deeply for too many people, and in that lifestyle, I didn't have to change myself to fit into some small box. It felt natural to give pieces of myself to different people and not feel guilty for it, and it didn't hurt that up until that point, I had never met someone who made me want to stick around for long enough anyway. I liked people, I had fun with them, but I always knew when my time with them had run its course. Nothing ever made me stop and think, this is it. This is the person I want to build my life with. That was true for years, and I accepted that it might always be that way for me. Until Sean. Right up until a few months ago, things were great with him. Honestly, better than great. Sean is everything I ever thought I wanted in a partner. I never believed I'd be lucky enough to find someone like him, someone so stable and kind. He's attentive, smart, funny in a way that doesn't try too hard. We liked almost all the same things. We could spend hours together without it feeling like work. And no matter what, he was always there when I needed him. And not that it's the most important thing, but it definitely mattered to me that the sex was good. For a long time, I thought I had it all figured out. Everything was going exactly how it was supposed to. But somewhere along the line, I started to notice little shifts. With Sean, I found myself living a bit differently. It wasn't anything he asked of me. He never pressured me or made comments, but I just couldn't help adjusting to fit what I thought he deserved. I started dressing more modestly without even thinking about it. I stopped spending so much time with the friends I used to go out with. I cut back on drinking, cut out smoking almost entirely. The girl I had been before, the one who never missed a Friday night out, slowly faded into the background. I told myself it was fine, that it was natural, that growing up and being in a serious relationship meant trade-offs, and that this was just part of maturing. At first I believed it. For a while I was even content, but then it all started coming back. I loved Sean, I did, but I missed the chaos and energy of my old life. I missed the music, the lights, the faces, the freedom of walking into a crowded space and knowing the whole night could go anywhere. It was more than just fun. It was genuinely a place where I felt like myself. And after months of pretending I didn't need that anymore, the distance between who I was with Sean and who I used to be felt awful. So a few months ago, I made a decision. One that I told myself was harmless, one that I convinced myself was just not that serious. I snuck out of our apartment one night and went back to the club. There wasn't really any need for all the secrecy. I could have easily told Sean I wanted a night out with friends or something, but I didn't. Something in me wanted to keep those two sides of me apart. Sean was one part of my life. The club was another. In my mind, mixing them felt unnecessary so I decided to compartmentalize, to have both without ever letting one spill into the other. It should have been simple. I really believed I could keep it that way. Just one night, I thought. Just one night to let myself breathe, to feel that rush again, and then I'd be fine. But it didn't work out like that. What I couldn't see at the time was that by making that one decision made my life 1,000 times more complicated. Going back to the club felt like going home. The moment I stepped through the doors, it was like I had stepped back into a version of myself I thought was pretty much dead. The music, the lights, the smell of sweat, perfume, and alcohol all mixed together in the air, it all felt comforting. It was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos that was familiar. I remember recognizing faces as I looked around. People I hadn't seen in years were still there, still holding their same spots at the bar or on the dance floor. Some waved when they caught my eye. Some pulled me into hugs like no time had passed at all. The longer I stayed, the harder it became to imagine why I ever left it behind. Everyone was so alive, and I blended right back in like nothing had changed. I realized how much I missed being part of something where nothing was expected of me, where I wasn't pinned to one role or one relationship. It was intoxicating, in a way that went beyond the drinks I was ordering. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. And maybe that was the problem, honestly. Feeling like myself again made me realize just how much I had changed, how much I had cut out to fit into the life I built with Sean. That realization didn't make me want to run home to him. It made me want to stay longer, to fall deeper into my old life, because I thought foolishly that I could balance both worlds without losing either. It was naive. I know that now at least. But back then I was still hopeful. It went on for weeks, and at first I told myself it was fine. I thought I was keeping the balance. I'd spend my days with Sean, cooking dinner together, watching shows on the couch, going to bed like everything was normal, and then every other night I'd sneak back into the clubs. I convinced myself I wasn't doing anything wrong because technically I wasn't crossing any lines. It was just music, drinks, and dancing. But that was the lie I kept repeating so I wouldn't have to face what was building inside me. And then one night I met Jake. He wasn't even supposed to be a big deal, just another stranger to talk to and maybe harmlessly flirt with at the bar. But from the start, there was something different. He had that kind of charm that drew you in before you realized what was happening. We clicked instantly. Conversation flowed easily and we laughed way too much. There were sparks between us, I can't deny that, and sometimes I noticed that we would lean too close, but that was it. I didn't let it get too intense, I kept us from crossing boundaries. He had a girlfriend and I had Sean. They were open, but I obviously wasn't, and that's why in the beginning I swore to myself it wasn't serious. It couldn't be. Sure, I allowed small touches and compliments here, but that was where it all ended, nothing further. I couldn't betray Sean like that. So for a while, Jake and I just shared drinks at the bar. We'd meet up, trade stories, talk about nothing and everything. But I felt it every time, like there was this pull toward him that was getting harder to ignore. It wasn't just attraction, though that was definitely there. It was the fact that I hadn't felt this kind of connection with anyone other than Sean. I had worked so hard to bury my poly side when I got married, but with Jake it kind of felt like it was clawing its way back out. Some of my friends thought I was insane for trying to shut that part of myself off in the first place. Most of them were married too, some even had kids, but they either had agreements with their partners or were in poly relationships that worked. They told me I was stressing myself out for no reason, that Sean should have been able to understand. And maybe they were right. Maybe if I had been braver and clearer at the start, things would have been different. But I can admit that I was a bit of a coward, and that wasn't how I handled it. I let it bubble up inside me until Jake came along and I was face to face with temptation. And it wasn't like Sean didn't know I was poly. He knew. I told him the first day we met. But somewhere along the way, it just became this unspoken agreement that marriage meant leaving that life behind. I never argued about it, never really questioned it, because I thought that was what I was supposed to do. I thought I could ignore that part of myself for the sake of the relationship. But being around Jake reminded me how exhausting pushing it down really was. At first, I told myself it was just friendly and armless between me and Jake, but every time we saw each other, the boundary got blurrier, until finally one night we just kind of forgot ourselves. We were at his place after the club. Our hangouts progressed from the club to his place most nights. His girlfriend didn't mind. Sometimes she would even join us and drink a little as we all talked, but that night his girlfriend wasn't around, and we were sitting too close on the couch. One minute we were laughing about something stupid, and the next our faces were inches apart. And then I kissed him. I tried to write it off as nothing, just a quick kiss, barely anything, a one-time mistake, something Sean could forgive if he ever found out. But the problem was that I didn't tell Sean. I kept it to myself for a week, and then I saw Jake again. I was able to lie to myself during that time and tell myself that it would never happen again. But the second I saw him again at the club, I knew that story I was telling myself wasn't going to hold up. We didn't even make it out of the club that night. We ended up having sex in the bathroom with the door locked behind us. It was messy and reckless and so different from what my life had turned into in recent years. My heart was racing so fast I could barely breathe, but in a weird way I felt kind of alive. It sounds awful to detail my cheating like this, but I just wanted to make it clear that it really did feel like I was getting back to who I was. It wasn't really romantic or careful, but my experience with Jake made me feel like myself. I was kind of desperate for a break from routine and schedules, and Jake gave me that. After that, it was like a floodgate had opened. We stopped pretending. Every time we ran into each other at the club, it went unspoken that we'd end up together before the night was over. Most times it was back at his place, but sometimes we didn't even make it out of the club before things got physical. It went on for weeks, longer than it should have. I'd go home to Sean afterward and sneak into bed. That's what started to break me. Not the act itself, but the way Sean stayed exactly the same while I was becoming someone he wouldn't even recognize. He was still the same caring, doting husband while I was lying to him and going behind his back almost every night. Eventually, the guilt became unbearable. It was awful lying to him all the time, all to hide my own selfishness. Every time I looked at him, I felt like I was drowning in it. So I ended things with Jake. I told him it was fun, but I couldn't keep going. There was no argument from him. He knew that what we had wasn't sustainable since my relationship wasn't open, and I'd been cheating on Sean the entire time. I promised myself I'd take a long break from the club, from that whole lifestyle, because I knew if I didn't, I'd end up destroying my marriage completely. For a little while, I actually believed I was in the clear. I thought the worst was over. I'd made my mistake, learned my lesson, and now I was going to put it behind me. But then Sean, ironically, did the last thing I expected. Wanting to be supportive, wanting to honor the fact that I was polyamorous even though I had buried that side of myself for years, he randomly came to me one night and proposed the idea of a threesome. He must have noticed how weird I was being and assumed it was because I was ignoring a part of myself. After what I'd done, the last thing I wanted was to do anything intense or crazy, but how could I have said no? If I had turned him down outright, he would have immediately started asking questions, and I couldn't risk that. I didn't want him digging too deep or wondering why I was suddenly hesitant, so I said yes. I agreed to do it, even though in the back of my mind I knew I wasn't in the right headspace for it. Weeks went by, and he didn't bring it up again. Honestly, I thought I was in the clear. I hoped I was. I convinced myself that maybe it was one of those things people say in the heat of conversation, then forget about once life gets busy again. I was relieved. I hoped he would just let it slide and never mention it. But then, about 3 weeks ago, he circled back. Not only did he remember, he was ready to move forward with it. That's how the plan started to take shape. Since it was meant to be more for me than for him, I was the one who picked out the girl on one of those hookup sites. We spent a couple of days messaging her back and forth, all three of us, testing the waters and all that. It felt a little surreal and weird, honestly, to be setting something like that up with my husband, but in the moment, I went along with it. Within 3 days, she was at our apartment, and it happened. It was fine, I guess. Fun, even. Definitely not the most exciting threesome I'd ever had, but not a disaster either. If anything, I could tell that Sean wasn't nearly as into it as me and her. He was present, he participated, but I could feel the difference in energy. Afterwards, we talked about it, and he admitted as much. He said it wasn't really his vibe, but that he still enjoyed it, and if it was something I felt I needed, he'd be willing to consider doing it every once in a while. That left me genuinely amazed. But more than that, what I felt was a bit of guilt. Crushing guilt. Because there he was, being open, honest, and accommodating, while I'd already gone behind his back with someone else. He was proving to me that I didn't need to lie, that I could have come to him instead of sneaking around, and that realization hurt like hell. At the same time, though, I couldn't help but feel a wave of relief. For once, I felt accepted and seen, comfortable about myself in a way I hadn't in years. That feeling stayed with me, so much so that I started to wonder what life could look like if this became a semi-regular thing. I guess I got too comfortable, maybe. I knew Sean hadn't exactly loved the first experience, but he had been willing, and I convinced myself that meant he wouldn't think much of doing it again. If anything, I thought maybe we could adjust the setup a little to make it more enjoyable for everyone involved. Since he wasn't as into the threesome with another woman, I thought maybe we could try something different. I wasn't trying to leave him out or push him aside when I brought it up. In my mind, I honestly believed he finally understood me and where I was coming from, and that meant I could be a little more open about myself and what I needed. But I was wrong. One night, while we were tossing around ideas about what to do next, I brought up the idea of having a threesome with 2 other guys. At first, Sean laughed it off like he thought I was joking, but I didn't let it go. I told him I wasn't joking, that it was something I hadn't done in years, and that I wanted to try it again. The second the words left my mouth, I could see his whole face change. He completely lost it. The anger hit so fast that I almost didn't know how to react. I had never seen him that upset before, not once in our entire relationship. He accused me of playing him for a fool, of stringing him along and using polyamory as a cover for what I'd been doing all along. He told me I probably wasn't even polyamorous at all, that I just wanted an excuse to cheat and make myself feel better about it. Things were pretty icy between us after that. I apologized and told him that we could press pause on the whole threesome and polyamory thing, that it could just be us for a while. I apologized and he seemed to settle down. He was still a bit distant, and things were rocky, but I was sure that we would be okay. Me suggesting that was hardly relationship-ending stuff. I thought we were going to be fine, that things would go back to the way they were, before the threesome, the cheating, and the clubbing, but I was wrong. They got so much worse. One night a week ago, I came home and Sean told me that we needed to talk. That instantly put me on edge. He had never announced us needing to talk before. But I tried to play it off. I made jokes to try and lighten the mood, but he wasn't having it. We sat in the living room, and with my heart in my throat, I asked him what was wrong. I'd never seen him look so somber and upset before. He asked me to tell him the truth, and if there was something I wasn't telling him. I was shocked and worried about what he knew, because I knew that something like that couldn't have come from nowhere. I was panicking, but I couldn't let it show, because that would confirm whatever suspicions that he had. I had to think quick, and unfortunately for me, that also meant not thinking very smart. I decided to deny it and act like I didn't know what he was talking about. I told him that nothing was going on. I had no idea that he was giving me one final chance, a chance to come clean and try to save what we had, and I'd chosen to lie to him once again. After that, he revealed everything. He told me that a friend of mine had shown up at the apartment the night before to return a pair of shoes that I had lent her at the club a while ago. They got to talking for a bit after that. That was when she apologized for bringing the shoes back so late and then mentioned to him how nice it was seeing more married poly couples and asked if he would want to do dinner sometime with her and her husband. He told me that he was confused about a lot of things, about me supposedly being at the club and about us being a poly couple. None of it made any sense. He had no knowledge of me ever going to the club recently, and they'd only had the threesome recently, something my friend couldn't have known, so why would she refer to us as a married poly couple? That was when he decided to do some digging. I worked at a conservation center and with a lot of animals, so it just made sense to leave my cell phone at home most days. I'd never regretted that decision until that night. He told me that after I left for work that morning, he finally gave in to the nagging feeling in his chest and went through my phone. He said at first there was nothing, just the usual chats, photos, and work messages. But then he scrolled a little deeper, into the hidden folders and old conversations I thought I'd buried. That was when he saw everything. The pictures, the videos. I couldn't even meet his eyes as he described them. Pictures and videos of me with Jake, laughing, kissing, touching, things I could never explain away. I hadn't deleted them because some sick, selfish part of me wanted to hold on to them like proof that I'd once felt alive again. But to Sean, they were confirmation of my betrayal. And it didn't stop there. He found the texts too. Conversations between me and Jake that left no room for interpretation. Long threads filled with jokes, confessions, and things I'd never even said to Sean. And then the ones that were even worse, the explicit ones. The kind of messages that confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt what I'd been doing. The proof was undeniable. Sean told me all of this calmly, but I could tell that he was furious. Eventually he snapped, and I could feel his anger when he said he couldn't believe I'd done this. He told me he had been willing to change for me, to stretch himself in ways he never thought possible. He'd gone along with things that made him uncomfortable, just so I could feel accepted and happy. And while he was doing that, while he was bending over backward to make room for me and what I needed, I had been sneaking around. I begged him. I told him I was sorry, that I hadn't meant for things to go this far, that I loved him. I tried to explain that it hadn't been about replacing him, that it was just me making a mistake, getting caught up in something I shouldn't have. But he wasn't listening. He told me there was no point. His mind was made up. He wanted a divorce. He said he wasn't telling me this to fight, or for us to talk and hash it out one last time. He just wanted me to know the truth. He wanted me to understand that I had chosen a few weeks of fun over the life we had built together. And then he got up. He didn't scream. He didn't slam anything. He just picked up his bag and walked out, leaving me sobbing in the living room. That was a week ago. Since then, I've called, I've texted, I've emailed. Nothing. No response. No word on whether he's already started the divorce process or if he's just gone completely. The silence is louder than any fight we ever had. I keep thinking about those pictures and texts, about how careless I was to let them stay on my phone. But the truth is, even if he hadn't seen them, the damage was already done. I was the one who cheated. I lied. I ruined everything. I didn't know that those nights with Jake would cost me everything. I didn't know I'd lose Sean over something I convinced myself was harmless at the time. Now I'm sitting here wondering if there's any way back. What do I do now? How do I fix this? How do I get Sean back if that's even possible?